afternoon, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean,
I'm Janice.
and welcome to our year in review, our top 10 favorite movies of the year. Once again, we are here to tell you that everybody else is wrong.
It's our my personal, his personal top 10.
Favorites, not best, favorites.
Right.
Because I know one of the ones I watched today, it was on their worst list, and it's going to be in my top 8.
Oh, okay.
That's called spoilers. It's actually up tease, whatever. This was an odd year for movies overall. Just the industry as a whole because of the strike. After dealing with a year and a half of not being able to do anything, and then we decided to go on strike, which was the right choice. The writers were first, and then the actors came in. I think overall it was almost 6.5 months or 7 months where stuff didn't get made, and stuff got pushed, and stuff got pushed again, and stuff that got pushed from the pandemic got pushed again. And so it was just an odd year for stuff overall. And we were just talking about it before we started recording. Unlike last year, where we had several just blow us out of the water, performances and movies overall, we had movies that we loved this year, but nothing that we were like, oh my God, that's amazing kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think my number one was pretty amazing.
My top 3 are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
They're going to be on everybody's list, so it's not really a big stretch, I think.
Yeah, at least my number one will be on everybody's list. But I think that like last year with Everything Everywhere All at Once, like there was not a list that wasn't in the top 1 or 2.
Yeah.
There just wasn't, and I think there's more room for discussion
this year.
year.
Yeah. This might be a little bit of a longer episode because there's gonna be some things that I'm going to talk about, the why things were on my list and why some people complained about those movies were reasons why I loved them. So, what we'll do is what we did last year, which is we'll do our honorable mentions. I think we only have a couple of piece this year. I didn't have 6. I controlled myself. 65 is not on my honorable mentions, but I'm going to mention it anyways. And then we'll do a quick rapid fire from 10 to 6, and then we'll maybe do a little bit longer discussion between because I think our top 5 are going to be pretty close to each other in that conversation. So your honorable mentions are
65 and The Creator.
I'm working through a thing right now, so I'm sorry if I'm coughing. Again, 65 did not make my honorable mentions. I'm going to honorable mention in anyways. Barbie.
Wow.
John Wick 4.
Wow.
And Dial of Destiny.
Oh, interesting.
So that was all 3 of those movies. Outside of 65, all 3 of those movies I thought about a lot, and I really liked them. But the other ones had more impact to me this year. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like I'll watch all 3 of those movies again.
Oh.
But all the other ones had a bigger impact for different reasons going forward.
Okay. Interesting.
Your number 10?
My number 10 is The Marvels.
We'll come back around to that. My number 10 was Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
Honor Amongst Thieves.
Yep.
I've watched that movie 3 times now, and I laugh every time. Your number 9?
My number 9 is A Haunting in Venice.
Did not make my list.
Huh.
When I looked over our list, I forgot we saw it this year.
It was on the list.
I know, and I forgot we saw it until I saw it on the list.
Okay, well, it's on Hulu, so we can go out there and watch it.
That's fine.
Or
that's fine.
Max, one of the 2.
Whatever. My number 9 is The Creator.
That's why I made it and 65 my runners-up, because I really liked them. We can go watch The Creator again, too. But they were both almost the same movie for me.
That's fair.
They weren't, but they were.
Yeah.
And so
I get that.
I just put them.
The Creator emotionally affected me in ways that I did not expect. I saw one trailer when we bought tickets.
Yeah.
And it was one of those that's like, oh, this is affecting me, and it's not just the storytelling. The visual storytelling
Yeah.
that was going
Yep.
on was amazing.
Amazing. Yep.
Your number 8.
My number 8 is John Wick 4.
Again, I liked it. We've seen it a couple times. But I you'll see. The internet can now start their complaining about my list
I'm not sure anybody cares, but
because number 8 is Rebel Moon.
oh.
I know it's recency bias. I know what the internet has said about it. The internet is all the way effing wrong. This thing is unepic. And like we said in our review, if you don't like Zack Snyder's style, you're not going to like this movie.
Yeah.
That's going to be the breaking point for a lot of people.
Yep.
But this hit every point for me as a sci-fi fan and a Star Wars fan. Holy cow, is this thing dense. I need to watch it 7 more times to pick up all this stuff. And this is only part 1, so they just set up the story.
Yeah, and that's why it's not on my list at all. I mean, I really loved it, but we only got the first half, and so I feel
Yeah,
like
it's fair.
I'm not
It's fair.
ready to make an overall
That's fair.
commitment.
Yeah. Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Your number, what are we on?
7?
7. Your number 7.
My number 7 was Fast X.
We'll come back around to
It
that.
was fun. I
Yeah.
liked it.
Yeah. That movie is elevated because of one role.
And it's better than some of the recent ones, even though it's still off the rails. It's not jumping a supercar from one high rise in Abu Dhabi to another.
Jump off of a dam and drove it down as it was exploding. But
Right. Off the rails. There's a line.
there's a line with it.
They crossed it.
Yeah.
A couple of movies.
Yeah.
Now they're back.
Yeah, absolutely. My number 7 is The Marvels. Again, the internet is wrong on that movie.
Yep, I liked it. I think it's one of the better recent Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Better than Ant-Man Quantumania.
Yeah. As much as I wanted to like Quantumania, and I thought that what they did was very interesting at a wild swing, it didn't connect as much as the Marvels did.
Yeah.
The 3 of them on screen
Yep.
doing anything, sitting
Yep.
around and watching Friends together. I'm totally going to be here for
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Your number 6?
My number 6 was Gran Turismo.
My number 6 was Gran Turismo.
Oh, I figured that'd be higher on your list.
I moved my list around a couple of times. But we just rewatched it again. I love the game. And I just to take that particular driving simulator. It's not a game. The driving simulator of that game.
Yeah.
And tell the real world story that actually happened. Sure, it's Hollywoodized a little bit, but I'm emotionally connected to all the characters.
Yeah, it's a video game movie, but yeah, you're emotionally connected. It had heart. You know, you were rooting for the kid. You were rooting for the kid's parents, dad specifically, to get on the side, and for David Harbour and Orlando Bloom's characters too.
Yeah.
You're kind of just rooting for everybody,
Yeah.
even though they were jerks sometimes.
And there's no real villain. I mean, there's a couple protagonists in there.
Yeah.
Some people might, he wasn't going against anything. Yeah, he was going against himself. That's what car racing is.
Yep.
You're racing against yourself. There
Yep.
just happens to be 40 other cars on the track.
Yep. And the stigma, the expectations or lack of expectations, all of that. But yeah, there was no specific bad guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're number 5.
My number 5, and okay, 5, 4, 3, and 2 are all interchangeable. I was like, but anyway, my number 5 is Mission Impossible.
My number 5 is Mission Impossible.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm very excited for the next one. Super rewatchability. We like the Mission Impossible franchise. And yeah, I felt this one, again, it was better than the last one, and I don't really feel like the last one was lacking specifically, but I just felt that the the last one was maybe a little more of just what can 50 whatever year old Tom Cruise do now.
Yeah,
And this one, there was a little more of the
there were stakes.
and espionage, which is
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Mission Impossible is about. So
yeah. Uh, Spoilers for a movie that's been out for 8 months. Like what happened with Rebecca Ferguson and that character. Well, it felt like an inevitability with her. She was always on the edge of being.
yeah, like 3 movies ago, you're
Yeah,
like, how
yeah,
are you still okay? Now you're still here. This has got to end well.
yeah, and it just but the whole idea of what they did with that story and that this was only part 1 with the next part coming, and I think, I Tom Cruise is just a different kinda guy,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that even in interviews now, he could be a complete douche in the real world, but in interviews, he's infamously known for jumping on the couch and all that stuff with Oprah, but every time I see him with the interview and everybody who talks about Tom said he's an amazing person, and, I saw, a guy who worked on Mission Impossible as, like, location scout got in the white cake thing on
Oh,
right,
nice.
right. So it's I love what they do with these movies. Tom Cruise is actually a really good actor
Yeah.
who has kind of made a pigeonhole for himself as this action star kind of thing, which is totally cool. But you have somebody who can actually act like Daniel Craig, like Benedict Cumberbatch, and you bring them to these action roles, these superhero roles. It adds a little bit of gravity to him, and
Mhm.
just what he's been able to do with that series is just. And like I said, I'm ready for more. I'm ready for more. Your number
My
4.
number 4 is the Barbie movie.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, 'Cause it's not even on your top 10.
Uh,
Um, I I went back and re-watched our review, and it's definitely one of those movies that I I had to sit with, and I do wanna
that's fair.
watch it again. Um, and I think that the reason that we gave the movie lower scores than what would justify it being
Yeah,
in my top 10. Not like horrible scores, just not,
yeah,
8s or 9s. I think 7, 7.5, whatever. Um, is just the cultural conversation that the movie has sparked for
yeah,
everyone. And
yeah,
I giggle because I remember when it first came out and there was a lot of like BuzzFeed did this these kind of outrageous reactions that guys had when they went to the movie with their
right,
girlfriends or
right.
their significant others. And like one guy left, like they lived in Florida and he left and moved to Colorado and just left his girlfriend because she took him to see this movie.
Yeah,
And and now, with all the stuff that this movie has done and all the people that
a billion plus, by the way.
right, right. But I'm talking socially
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
The conversation.
the conversation that's still going on and it just makes me laugh. It's just like, do you feel like a douche yet or will you never get it?
Yes, yes. There are the that's and so I guess for me with the Barbie movie, my initial reaction right out of the theater was this was not a man bashing movie that some people were saying. I'm going to say everybody. A lot of people were saying that this was a
Yeah,
man bashing movie
yeah,
because they didn't watch the whole movie. It wasn't about
right.
bashing men. It was about the patriarchy and how it affects all of us. How it
It can't
lessens
go all the way one way or all
all
the
the way
way
the
the
other way.
other.
Right,
It needs to be in the
right.
middle.
And that was the conversation that they were having.
Yeah.
Wrapped in this idea of this toy that has had ups and downs of social experiments with it throughout time,
Mhm.
which is a great avatar for the conversation that was being had in this movie.
Right, because you get the little girls in and then
And you get, but you also have to like the part of the marketing was if you loved Barbie as a little girl, you're going to love this movie. If you hated Barbie as a little girl or a little boy, you're going to hate this. You're going to love this movie
yeah.
because they knew what they were doing when they did
Yep.
that. But ultimately, for me, As a middle-aged, middle-class white dude, um, it didn't impact me as deeply as you and other women I know in my life,
Right.
and that's not wrong.
Right.
It impacted me. Definitely, impacted me. I love Ken and his journey of figuring himself out. The whole horse thing. As soon as I realized that patriarchy didn't really mean anything about horses, I was out. You know, like it's just like
Right.
a perfect thing. Everybody's performance should get nominated for this movie.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it just didn't impact me as much as I think
Right.
everybody else, and that's fine.
Right.
That
It doesn't mean quite as much to you because you're a guy and
right.
haven't had to live through America Fiera's,
Right. Right.
speech where
I
we all
get
just
that
went,
speech, but I haven't lived it.
right.
So and especially from somebody of non-white culture as a woman
Yeah.
having to have to tell that speech. She's amazing in that. And so I don't care about the Golden Globes, but she should get a speech Emmy nomination for that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Yep.
The only other thing I'm going to say about the Barbie movie, and we're going to talk about this again with the other one that happened that weekend, um, both the good and bad of the timing of when all of that happened was they were at the premieres
Yeah.
or they were going to the premieres and the strike was called and and everybody circled the wagons around the decision for the actors and the writers with specifically with Barbie. um it was a really weird thing because Margot Robbie was the producer on the movie,
Right.
who also starred in the movie,
Right.
who hired Greta Gerwig to write and direct it.
Right.
So there's this big thing that was all the way around it, and I missed that whole conversation that would have been going on the 2-3 weeks around Barbieheimer. However, we're getting it now.
Yeah.
And what we're getting now is the cast of Barbie sitting around and talking about everyone else's reaction in retrospect to what was going on for
Yeah.
that weekend.
Yeah.
And I saw a thing, it was a round table with Greta and Margot. I think America was there and a couple other people. And they talked about like they they were watching TikToks of people seeing other people in pink on the street corner saying hi Barbie. And they were seeing couples who were going to see Oppenheimer and Barbie in back-to-back viewings,
Yeah.
and he was Oppenheimer and she was Barbie.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is it's probably cooler that it kind of happened that way because they could sit back, outside observer to the phenomenon that was going on,
Yeah.
and then come back and retrospectively like was this uh the best of the 90s show that VH1 used to be this channel, kids.
VH1's still around.
But they used to do like the best of the 90s. So
Yeah.
they would come back 30 years later and do the best of the 90s. Well, they got to do it 6 months later, the
Yeah.
best of Oppenheimer weekend.
Yep. Yep.
Barbieheimer weekend.
Barbieheimer.
So
Barbenheimer.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's both it's cool and sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
If you haven't been around for one of our reviews, we try to find the things that we like about movies and pop culture and TV shows and
Right.
stuff like that. And that was one of the things for me that was just
Yeah.
it's just I think it's cool.
I mean, it just, it happened. There's not really anything we can do about it, but it's interesting to think about how it could have been if they hadn't all been on strike, and then how it wouldn't have been if they hadn't have all been on strike. So
Yeah, absolutely. My number 4, I think that's what we're on, right? 4.
yes. Yes.
Is Fast 10.
Not surprised you scored it higher than me.
Right. From jump, I've loved the Fast series.
Yep.
I even love Tokyo Drift. I even love Too Fast and Furious for what it is. Like it's bonkers in the
it's plaid on plaid.
It's bonkers in the wrong in a direction that's different than everything else. But the reason we keep coming back to this series is because the people who come in are sucked into the orbit that is Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
and they all love him, and they all stick around, and they all do it for pennies on the dollar. Um, Helen Mirren called and said, "Put me in this movie."
Yeah,
Uh,
and she's been in multiple movies
uh,
now.
Rita uh,
Rita Moreno.
Rita Moreno called and said, "I want to be in a fast food movie," and Vin's like, "You could be my mom," and she's like, "Yes, that would be amazing." Um, and just so yeah, it's about flashy cars and girls in skimpy clothes and and the espionage and it's all of that, and it's also the ridiculous stunts and the
Yeah,
and the really like defying the laws of physics and gravity at times
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
It is that, but we keep coming back to this series because the people who are in it care for each other, and that relays that family atmosphere on the screen.
Yep.
And so, and Jason Momoa, I'm not kidding. Jason Momoa should get an Oscar nomination for this role.
Yes, that role was made for him, or they just said, here's the guide, make it your own." I don't know which one it was, but even watching Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, I was like seeing pieces of the
Yeah,
character that he
yeah.
did in Fast 10.
It's just I'm here for all of it. And there's rumors that Paul's gonna be in the next one. I don't know how they're gonna do it. Brian's gonna show up in it somewhere. Um, there's been discussions that they've been trying to get Cody to come in and be a stand-in, and then kind of mask his face with
Mhm.
Brian
Mhm.
with Paul Walker's
Mhm.
face. This was how they kind of finished. Was that 6, 5, 6? And so that was 7, 8 years ago now. And the technology's just go watch The Mandalorian. Technology's gotten a lot
Yeah.
better since then.
Well, and there's AI too.
And
I don't know how advanced that is,
yeah,
but
but I think it's going to be interesting what they do. So,
yeah, that'll be cool.
um, I think our top three are all the same movies, just in a different order.
Probably.
Three is
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider Verse,
Maybe in the same order.
maybe. Uh Everybody's gonna say everything about this movie. Uh, Into the Spider Verse is our favorite Spider-Man movie
Yeah.
until this came out,
Yeah.
and this was only this is back to the conversation of Dead Reckoning and Rebel Moon. This was a part one of a two-part
Yep.
thing.
Yep. Yeah, but I feel like it's actually a part 2 of a 3-part thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I mean I don't know.
It was a complete story in the first one, and this has a complete story to it. It
Yeah.
just sets up. It just ends on a gigantic, into the middle of the story cliffhanger.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair. It's a little more of a cliffhanger than the last one. The last one did wrap it all up, at least for young young Miles,
Yeah,
and not just young Miles. But yeah, I mean the animation is amazing. We liked the animation from the first one when people were like, what is all the dots about?" And I don't understand. It's all
Ben-Day dots
fuzzy, and it's like, have you ever cracked open a comic book?
from the girl who doesn't do
I
comics.
don't do comics, but I know I've opened them. I know what they look like. I know what the style is, and just it tells an awesome story. So what's there not to like?
Yeah.
And good music.
The music's amazing. Multiple times I've had both vinyl of the soundtrack in my hand, like multiple times. So yeah, the music's amazing. The art style's amazing. The story of Miles and what he's going through, and Gwen's story this time,
Yep.
starting with her
Yep.
telling her in her story, her world where your emotions are all kind of watercolored in the background,
Yep.
and there's a reason that her world is the trans flag colors. I'm not saying that Gwen is trans, but it just there's a reason for it. There's a reason the way Miles' universe is the way it is.
Hmm.
Then you go to New York,
Oh yeah.
and it's a
Mom,
very
New York.
different
Yeah.
kind of style. You've got Hobie, who's got that on fours, you know jumpy style or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah. And
2D and
if you don't already appreciate this movie, go watch um uh
Cinema Wins. Cinema Wins and New Rockstars.
Cinema Wins is the other one. I was thinking it was the other guy, but anyway, they both explain, they break down the um frame per second rate, and how it's faster for this and slower for that, and what that does to kind of affect the way it looks,
Yeah.
and it's super interesting.
And, uh, the year Ford versus Ferrari came out was the same year that Infinity War came out. And there was a debate on who was the worst villain between Thanos and what's his name from Ford Motor Company, who kept screwing over Carroll Shelby.
Uh, um, uh, oh my God.
Not Henry Ford, the guy, the his like right hand guy who kept putting.
Yeah, and he left Ford and went to Dodge.
No, not him. Not
His sidekick guy. Yeah. Okay.
Miguel O'Hara is in that conversation of worst villain ever. Like he is not really a Spider-Man. It's
we have all kinds of theories
we have
about who
so many
he
theories.
actually is or
Okay,
isn't.
so of all the movies, you've noticed that we have left 2 out.
Which one's your number 2?
I've switched it 3 times, so whatever one you want to pick is going to be the one we're going to talk about
Okay,
next.
my number 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I put it as my number 1 like after 2 days of looking at it. But I had Oppenheimer number 1 too,
Right,
for a long time.
right.
So
And yes, that's kind of why I said that. Like, honestly, at least from 4 up, I could interchange any of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4,
3,
Volume 3. It says 3. I said 4. It wraps up the story. You're happy about where some people or characters end up at the end. You're like, multiple times James Gunn tore our heart out, showed it to us,
put it back, stitched it back up.
No, slapped some spider legs on it, then put it back and stitched it up. Mechanical spider legs. I like Floor. I just thinking about Floor makes me want to cry. And he wanted to make it worse. Like he wanted to not
another version
have like any face or something, or she couldn't. I don't know. I was like, oh my God, James, what is wrong with your brain? And
he does have horror roots, so that's where he started. So
yeah,
and not just horror, like gross body horror.
I'm not surprised. I thought it wrapped it up really well. I think the only thing I would say is I kind of wish they hadn't left in the is it post-credit scene stinger, or is it mid-credit scene? I don't remember which one. Peter and his grandpa sitting at the table, and they kind of left it open because why? How? It's
there is a run of the comic where Peter goes home and does adventures on Earth where without the Guardians and stuff like that. So that it kind of feels like they're gonna lean into that, especially since we kind of know with the Earthbound stuff with Echo and Moon Knight and like and Hawkeye, like all the Earthbound stuff is very different than the cosmic stuff that they were doing with the Eternals.
I just feel like Peter's story is over.
That's fair.
So that was the post-credit scene, and the mid-credit one is the one that I'm actually hope that they do continue with. Rocket and
The
Groot
new
and
the new the
the
new
new
Guardians, yeah.
Guardians, great. But I really feel like Peter's story is over.
Yeah, um I'm not gonna fault that decision. Some people have said that Phase 4 was down. They had more misses in Phase 4 than they did in like
Yeah,
Phase 3,
but they
but
also had way more content with Disney
they had way
Plus.
more content. I still think they're batting above the Mendoza line, and they're gonna make it to the Hall of Fame. Um, but of all the things that they set up, of all the story that they told in that movie, I'm going to be okay with leaving a little bit of a tease that Peter could come back, considering everything else that their completion of Peter's story.
Yeah,
I'm totally okay with that
yeah,
because I wouldn't be upset with this idea of this version of Peter who's gone through losing his love, losing his mom, leading a group, finding what it means to be himself, and now going home and saying, "Okay, now what does it mean to be human?" I'm totally okay with that kind of conversation.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm here with it. But I openly cried multiple
yeah,
times. Like
yeah.
Rocket screaming breaks my heart every time. It's still got the comedy and everything. We've watched it a couple times. I'll go watch it right now. It's uh, we knew going in that we're gonna get our hearts ripped out, and we were excited about it because we're masochists, I guess, or whatever.
But it was nice that they weren't ripped out in the way that we
We all thought that either
thought.
Rocket or Peter was going to die,
Right.
and Drax was definitely dead.
Yeah.
Everybody said that going in.
Yeah, and that's not what happened. And they gave us a twist that now we're all like, "Well, now I've gotta go rewatch everything,"
Yeah,
because Rocket is actually
the story is about Rocket the
the
entire
whole
way.
story is
Yeah,
about Rocket.
yeah,
And we all thought it was about Peter.
yeah,
So now you gotta go rewatch everything and go, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
see where that." Yeah.
We've watched the first Guardians. We need to do all three of them in a row, and maybe in reverse order. So maybe we can kind of pick up stuff as we go along. But
Well, even in, the not multiverse, the, um,
what if?
Endgame
Oh, Endgame.
and,
Yeah,
those where because now Rocket's in with everybody,
yeah.
right? Everybody's there and everything, and you even there's been some things where you're like,
Yep. Yep. And we've spent a lot of time yelling at Warner Brothers for how they screwed up Zack Snyder and the DCEU. It's in good hands.
"Yep,
It is in good hands. It's going to take it a minute to get around, and we'll get there. We'll get there.
yep."
Okay, so that leaves Oppenheimer. I'm not. It's like I said, it could have been either or for
Yeah,
me for number one.
yeah,
I think the only reason that it's not number one for me is we haven't watched it again yet
right,
because we've been kind of
because
waiting for it to come out. Well, actually, we were waiting for the Blu-ray to come out because there's 3 hours of DVD extras, to be honest. And then Christmas happened, and then somebody had to graduate from nursing school, so we didn't have any extra money to do anything like buy a Blu-ray. Uh, but yeah,
yes. I mean, we love Christopher Nolan. I don't know that there's anything that he's done, maybe something that we haven't watched that came out, like, before we started really getting into him, but I don't think there's anything he's done that I don't like.
we like Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
You're wrong.
yes. Like all the Dark Knights, they are not my favorite. Batman has changed since those came out. They used to be my favorite Batman, and um, now the Batman is my favorite. But, yeah, just Cillian Murphy, right, and, visually and the sound. Again, I was watching our review, and one of the things that I had said was I would like to watch it um, with
Subtitles.
the subtitles on because the sound is so big that you don't necessarily always catch.
That's a
Um,
Christopher Nolan thing.
it is, and
Watch Tenet again.
yes, Tenet is can get really loud, the sound. Um, but it's also because we saw it in IMAX.
Yeah.
Um, but the story, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, like everybody, Emily
Emily Blunt.
Blunt,
Yeah.
everybody in it just
Oh yeah, Jack
brought
Quaid's
it.
in this, and he's like
Yeah,
the 70th character in it, and you're like,
right.
Jack's over there going, "I'm in a hoppa. I'm here. Hi. Okay, I'm gonna go back over here and move papers."
Yeah,
Uh, when they when I think it was Variety that dropped the news that Christopher Nolan's next movie is going to be Oppenheimer, and we both went, yes.
yeah,
Like it's an automatic. When as soon as tickets go on sale, we're gonna go see it. And we know it's Christopher Nolan, so we know it's going to be on IMAX, so we're going to see it in IMAX.
yep.
And then they started adding the cast. Now, Pinky Blinders is, I don't think I'm stretching here, one of our favorite TV shows of all time. We've been through it twice, and we've talked about going through it again, and it's like 70 something episodes.
Yeah.
I like to do Game of Thrones again, too. That would be like the sixth time. But when they announced Killian, they made a point of saying, like, this is Killian's first, like, on screen big boy. We are making this movie because Killian is Oppenheimer,
Right, right. And
and
his first lead in a
in
movie.
a major movie. Now he
Yeah.
was the lead in 28 Days Later,
Okay,
but
sorts. Yeah.
that movie's made for $7 with guerrilla filming and
I don't
like
know if I would call him a
he maybe
co-lead.
with Glenn Neeson. No, uh,
Gleason.
Gleason. Gleason.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so it so he took on this role. He embodied who Oppenheimer is, and they stayed fairly close to the story.
Yeah,
And now, again, we talked about how they Hollywoodized
yeah.
a little bit of it.
Well, unless the person this story is being written about, writes down everything you do
Yeah,
all day long,
yeah,
there's stuff they just have to take license with. But
yeah.
they did try to keep, like, the Florence Pugh character, she did exist for him. She did
Die
die,
under
that they
suspicious.
said was suicide, but Christopher Nolan kind of pointed out that nobody was there.
Right, right.
Um, they know pretty much the stuff around the building of the bomb
Yeah,
because, it was a military thing, so a lot of that was documented.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but and they used some of the real.
They filmed at Los Alamos,
Yeah,
and like they did a lot of that stuff,
yeah,
and they filmed in New Mexico you know, before it became Los Alamos and on the ranch, the family ranch and stuff like that. One of the best, two of the best performances we've seen in the last probably 5 years were given in this movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy. Robert Downey Jr. proving once again that he is uh, it, when he's amazing as Iron Man. Everybody forgets that he won an Oscar before that.
yeah,
Now, in that gap between there, he had a little bit of off the rails
yeah.
time
He
and
had a
some
he had,
time
yeah.
where they give you orange because it's matches nothing. Um, but but uh, he was amazing in this movie,
Yep.
and I've seen interviews again, like we were talking about with Barbie, kind of the after the fact of coming back around to these
Yeah,
conversations. He knew that Killian was going to be on the entire time, which made him be competitive and say, okay, then I need to be on the whole time too.
yeah.
And
Because he's the protagonist to
right,
Oppenheimer's antagonist. He just wanted to. He just wanted to science.
he just wanted a science,
He
and
just wanted a science, and they had to make it political.
that was that's always been the problem when government gets involved in science. It's not nothing new,
Right.
but especially during the war, after the war, and then post that with McCarthyism. Um, just the idea of all Oppenheimer wanted to do was have people get equal pay for the work that they did,
Right.
and so they talked about starting unions And McCarthyism turned that into, oh, you want to be a communist,
Communist, yeah.
and you went to one union meeting to see if it was your thing, and they held it against you and pulled your clearance. And it's the examples, the stories that are being told is just a giant mirror to what's going on in the real world. They talk about this a lot with Star Wars, is that they put this giant mirror up to the real world. They just wrap it up in laser swords and space battles. And they did it with real world what's going on here. He's getting railroaded for doing exactly what they wanted him to do. And history
Right, but
remembers it. m- History at this point, not for a long time, but at this point, realizes no, he was right. Oppenheimer was the right dude.
well, yeah, but I mean, he also, as a scientist, he was singularly focused on,
Yeah,
can this be done? And then the government kinda came in and said, "Hey, we'll kind of, fund your, ideas, and you can, continue." And so, for many scientists are really smart, smart minds, that's all they're thinking about,
yeah.
right? They're very focused
I
on
can't
that.
see beyond that fence.
And he knew it shouldn't happen. He knew that it was a bad thing. But he wanted to prove it could be done. And they came in and said, well, if we don't build it, they'll build
Yeah,
it, and then we'll be the ones being
yeah.
bombed. And
The Germans will do it, or the Russians will do it, or yeah, yeah,
right. I mean, and they even said, they kept saying that the Germans had already done it.
yeah.
And, come to find out way after the fact that wasn't true. Propaganda works. But the government took advantage of him, and then once they got what they wanted, they just went and found some reason to get rid of
I'm
him.
grinning because as we are sitting there talking, we're talking about more about the story of Oppenheimer, and I know we're both doing it. We're both watching the scene in our head
Yeah.
because now we have a visual representation of what this story is and how important it was.
Right. I mean, before the movie happened, I knew who Oppenheimer was.
Well, I
I
knew,
knew
but I
that
didn't know the story.
he
Yeah,
made the bomb,
yeah.
but I didn't know the story. I
And I
didn't.
also realized as you were talking too that, oh yeah, Matt Damon's in
Oh
this.
yeah, he is.
That shows you how good everybody is in this
Yeah.
because Matt Damon's amazing, and you're
Yeah.
like, Matt Damon's in this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those big ensembles that everybody just brought, and they talked about it with Florence Pugh when Christopher Nolan came to her and said, "I have this part. It's very small. I think you'd be great, but it's really small, and you're a big time actor." And she's like, "Yes."
Yeah.
I get to be in a Christopher Nolan movie? Yes. I
Yes.
don't care how small it is.
She will be. I will not be surprised if she has a bigger role in the next Christopher Nolan, whatever he ends up doing.
Yeah, I could
I have to ask the question if what did Robert Downey Jr. What book did he give Christopher Nolan as a gift of while they were filming? What's that book? Because that's going to be Christopher Nolan's next movie. And if you haven't heard the story, I'm going to tell it here before we get to an hour talking about our best movies of the year. Is on the set of Tenet, there kept being these big breaks in time while they were setting up the next shot because it's Christopher Nolan and everything's whatever, and so they're kind of stuck. And so Robert Pattinson gifted this book to Christopher Nolan, and it is the biography of Oppenheimer. And Chris loved the story so much that before they were even done with Tenet, like it was in editing or whatever, he had started the process of doing Oppenheimer and getting the rights and doing all the stuff and whatever. So whatever the book that Robert Downey Jr. gave Christopher, I would like. What has Christopher Nolan not done that we that
I don't know. I mean, I really liked Tenet. Kind of an original.
Project Hail Mary?
Yeah, I don't know if he'd do it.
If you don't know what Project Hail Mary is, that's Andy Weir's third book uh, about first contact. Christopher Nolan, on IMAX.
Yeah, it would be amazing. I just don't know, because the Dark Knight movies were kinda just they weren't his passion project. They were a way for him to
Yeah,
make money to be who
to
he
do
is.
Tenet, to do
Yeah, to be who
Oppenheimer.
he
Yeah,
is now, where he can just say, "I'm going to do this movie," and everybody's gonna say, "Yeah, you're gonna do that movie," and he doesn't
let
have
him
to
do
worry
Bond.
about it.
There's already been conversation about him doing Bond.
He won't do it.
He won't do it, but I would love to see him do Bond. So that is our year in movies. We will not be doing a worst of list. We don't believe in those around here. The only reason I brought it up is because it's Jeremy Johns who brought up the Marvels was on his list, and um, if you have been here for our Rebel Moon conversation, we don't like Rotten Tomatoes because I'm tired of somebody else saying that their opinion is the absolute truth,
Right.
and so
This is how we
this
feel
is how we
about the
feel about
movies that
these
we
movies
watched
and
this
why
year.
we go to the movies. We go to the movies for the entertainment value, not to be um, emotionally wrecked. Although Guardians did, and
Not to pick everything apart. I mean, if I ultimately, if it's an hour in and I'm like, "Is this movie over yet?" It's I don't it's not a good movie to me. It could be your favorite
yep,
movie, but to me, it wasn't a great movie,
yeah,
and vice versa.
yeah. Every movie is somebody's favorite movie.
Yeah,
Distilled lines from
yeah,
Cinema Wins, and
yeah.
so
Except for The Road,
the road can die in a grease fire.
worst
T-
movie
Two
ever.
and a half hours I'll never get back. Devil's Gate was better than that with Johnny Depp, and that had no ending. It just like we ran out of film. Bye. Welcome to our rants. So let us know what's on your list. What if you've made it this far? Tell us what's on your list of the top 10 movies of the year. And like this channel, subscribe to the channel. It's free. It helps us out a ton. And follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I swear I'll be posting more holidays. And until next time, cult members, go enjoy a movie. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.